Hello and welcome to Stylist Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Grace Hatley. She is based in Todmorden, West Yorkshire, and she's a food stylist and an ex-model. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. We just had a little preamble before we press record, and you were just telling me how sticky you are today because you're covered in like Christmas pudding.
Yeah, I had some like sponge puddings going on today, and I don't know how it ended up on my legs, on my arms, on my elbows, and like got in the car and was driving home. I was like, oh my god, where is this coming from? It's just part of the job, you know.
Yeah. I think the last time we worked together, it was Christmas puddings as well, actually, like back in last summer, maybe,
Yes.
for another supermarket. And it was like stressful Christmas puddings where they're asking you for like certain slices and certain angles. And you've only got so many that you can pick from because
Yeah,
some look like they've been run over.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah, you get such a variety of samples. Like it's good if you get more than one, to be fair. You could get normally a few samples and you have to kind of look through them, pick which is the most appetizing, it's got a good angle, got a good shape, and then you go from there. But obviously if people want you to kind of take a bit out of them or pour some cream over them, you only got so much time to achieve that. So it's a bit more high stakes than just your casual mince pie just sat there doing its thing.
yeah. I think that's something as well people don't realize is like you might only have like one chance to get that perfect like pour of cream or that perfect like angle of cut, or you know, I think people sometimes just look at food images and go like, oh, that looks really nice, that looks really appetizing, it's done its job, but they don't realize how much time and like precision is in before like prep work.
So many stages, and especially if you've got an image that is going through multiple like transformations, like we've been doing a lot recently, that is kind of like a special range. So they, you know, it wants to be looking as good as possible because it's the best the supermarket offers. So you'll kind of take that product and you'll make it look really good, but then you'll do options with things like falling down onto it, you know, like little bits of lemon falling down onto it, and, you know, drips of something falling down onto it. And that all takes a lot of time because you're pouring it, you're resetting, you're pouring it, you're resetting, and then you're doing a different version. So it can be 1 or 2 shots in a day, and I don't think people know that when they just stroll past the aisles in the supermarket. They're like, oh, I'll have that salmon. That only took 12 hours to get that image. It's mad. It's mad.
It's so right. It's like a game of patience almost with food styling, I think. Like I've only ever done like a teeny tiny amount, and like I thought to myself, fuck this. This is too, I need way too much patience for this, which I don't own. So I think it's a very admirable like skill to do, because I don't know how you don't like fling stuff and just go, ah, fuck that.
I mean, sometimes, sometimes I want to, and sometimes if we've got a bit of a hectic day, my brain doesn't have time to catch up with my organization. So on those days, I feel like I'm always chasing my tail. But if you've got like plenty of time and a good brief and you can work it all out and you're really organized, that's my favorite, when you're like, it's all there and ready to go. But when you're kind of working on the hoof, it's like chaos in my brain, absolute chaos.
Yeah. I think I'm the same though when I'm like trying to style something, say it's like interiors and my brief maybe isn't as specific as what I'd like, and you're just like chasing around and you're like up and down in props and like just can't find what you want, and it just turns into a really stressful day.
Yeah, you just
I end up with a messy set.
Exactly. It just ends up like, and you feel embarrassed. And you're like, I'm sorry, I'm not normally this mental. Like, I'm really sorry that there's stuff everywhere. I don't normally work like this. But the thing is, like, when you don't have that specific brief that you need, you spend time trying to do guesswork and trying to cover a lot of options because, you know, you're not 100% sure what's going to be right. And you're like trying to find things that you can't find, like you say. So it just takes so much more time. And then your brain just kind of unfurls as you're doing it. And I much prefer to be on it and organised, but you just have to roll with the punches, go with what you got.
It's so true. And then we come out of it and you sit in the car. I don't know if you do this. I sit in the car and I go, oh, fuck, what's happened? And I look like I've been dragged through a bush backwards.
Oh, my God, like 100%. I'll talk about one of my first ever experiences as a food stylist, and I was actually assisting on set, and it was for a Lurpak campaign, and I got called in last minute to assist a food stylist from London, and I was also asked to do some hand modeling on set as well. So I was off set doing prep, and I was on set doing the hand modeling. But what I didn't realize was the motion was like, like the robotic camera arms, which they program. So they'll program like it to do a certain movements within a 12-second frame. And it's just set, and that just goes on repeat. So within I think it was about 12 seconds, within that 12 seconds, I had a piece of bread, and I had to butter it, put some tomatoes on it, put some bacon on it, put some sprinkle or something on it, put a lid on it, and then put the Lurpak in at the end of the shot. And it was like choreography. So I had had a prop stylist holding things on plinths around me, like on spatulas, because you couldn't cut in between the shot. It was just a fluid shot. And that was one of my first ever jobs. And we were there from 8 a.m. in the morning till 12 at night trying to get these 3 shots. So when I got in the car, I was like vibrating from the adrenaline, but also so tired. I had to put on the loudest music on the way home so I didn't fall asleep in the car. And it's just one of them where you just what even just happened today? What was that? Yeah. What was I part of?
Yeah. And then you must see the final advert and be like, oh, that looks really great, that 12 seconds that I did, but it took 14 hours.
Yeah, to get the perfect, because they wanted everything to fall just right, to get that perfect that perfect spread of butter even. We did that so many times to get that perfect spread where it just glides across it, but you get a little bit peeking over the edge of the bread as well. The process that took, that was my first, I can't believe that was probably the hardest thing I've done, and that was my first ever thing I did. So it was a good kind of throw you in at the deep end moment.
Yeah, like a baptism of fire almost. Just gotta get going. So you still do some hand modelling as well, and that's really cool as well. But do you find that difficult if you're asked to do food styling and hand modelling on the same day?
Yeah, I think so. It can be if there's a lot of food cooking involved. If it's quite simple stuff, then that's absolutely fine. But if there's a lot of prep and process of the cooking involved and hand modelling, it can be a bit full on. And it's also you feel pressured not to get crap all over your hands and not to cut yourself or burn yourself. And you're like, oh my God, I've got to be quick, and I've got to try and be really cautious and remember to moisturize before I go on set. Yeah. So it's funny, yeah. I put my washing gloves on as well, and everyone's like, oh, you diva. And I'm like, no, I'm hand modelling today.
Yes, your hands don't look like prunes when you're holding a burger or something.
Exactly.
So how did you get into modelling? Tell me that journey.
It was a really strange way to get into it, is what I'll say. So I got scouted when I was 15 at V Festival down south.
Oh, I remember
where I'm from.
Festival.
You remember it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I got scouted the year before by Storm, but they never took me on. And then I got scouted the year after by a company called D1. I don't know if they're still going actually. And it was so strange because I was at this festival just having a great time with my mates, but I was in this is so bad. I was in an orange poncho, head to toe. I think it was a Thorpe Alton Towers or a Thorpe Park poncho. And I was like, how do you know what's going on under here? But they wanted to take me on. I was like, there could be all sorts going on under this huge poncho. But they scouted me, and then I started modelling in London around the age of 15, 16.
Nice.
Yeah.
I bet that was a weird experience as a teenager though.
Yes, and to be honest, I was still at school at the time. I think I was at sixth form, and everyone was so interested in it because it was just such a new world to those people at school. And I remember going to castings and having to get my mum's approval to go to them, and using an A to Z to get around London because there wasn't Google Maps at the time, and that was probably one of the hardest parts because all the castings were here, there, and everywhere. in little basements, in pineapple dance studios, in like the most random streets that you would never find. And it was a weird experience. I was very young, and looking back, you are like quite influential at that time. You know, it's easy to be influenced, and it's quite. I was lucky, actually. I think because I danced 5 nights a week, I was really slim anyway, and I was really like active. But I remember getting one of my first test shots back, and it was an unedited image of my face, and I had these amazing like lashes that were like bird feathers, and it was just like me looking up into the light. And I looked at that and I was like, that is absolutely horrible, and it made me feel awful about myself. You could see every spot, every like pimple, all the indentations of my skin, and it's weird to see yourself that often. It's got to have an impact for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how now the kind of expectations of the public and marketing is that skin now has texture. Retouchers aren't told to like completely smooth out all skin, and like
definitely
it's weird how the actual fashion of it has changed.
Yeah,
but the impact of it is probably still sticking with you.
Yes,
like all these years on.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, 100%. Because that kind of, you see the images of yourself from unedited to edited, and you're like, oh, that's what I should aspire to, basically. But nobody can aspire to that. That's the bottom line. You can't aspire to something that's been edited digitally. It's just not going to happen. So I think it's more these days, even though, I mean, it's still marketed, isn't it? That image, even though it's like, oh, a bit more of a raw beauty standard, like a bit more normal in quote marks, it's still kind of dictated by the people that are there doing it that day. So it'll be angles, lighting, make sure you've got a wide focus camera so you don't have to get as much detail, or, you know, all that stuff. So it's still, you know, there's aspects of it, it's more subtle. So you have to take everything with a little pinch of salt, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think also being in this industry makes you realise that everything's a little bit manipulated, if that's the right word. Like even when I'm styling clothes, I'm like, well, I've tucked that edge to make it look neater so it looks nicer on the hanger, or, you know, you've like hidden something away with some magnets, or, you know, and I think everything's slightly manipulated because at the end of the day we're trying to sell something, a feeling, a clothing, a beauty standard. We're trying to sell something to somebody else, aren't we, really?
Yeah, exactly. What you're doing has to be slightly aspirational. It has to be something that people like take a second look at. So
yeah,
everything is, you know, manipulated in that way. Yeah, I think you're right.
So what made you decide to hop over into food styling?
Well, it was quite like a lengthy process because I did modelling in London for a few years, and then I also, after university, I did modelling in Manchester for a good few years as well. So it's only in the last kind of 4 years that I've done that transition to food styling. And it was from being on set and seeing other food stylists, and I was like, oh my God, is that an actual job? Like, it really took me by surprise. I was like, I cannot believe that. And it just looked so fun and creative. And like, I've always had passion for food. And I just thought, what an interesting way to bring that aspect of my life into a creative domain without having to do the hours of working in a kitchen. I was just like, anything not to be a chef.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think what people maybe don't realise is that like some chefs transition into food styling because the hours are really shit of being a chef. Yeah. And actually there's a lot of creatives who are food stylists like yourself who've never set foot in a kitchen, because it's actually the skills, some skills cross over, but they're actually wildly different.
Yes, I think it's really helpful to have an understanding of food. And I think that although I'm not a trained chef, I've always been cooking. My dad's a chef. My brothers have both worked as chefs at some point. And my mum and dad used to own a restaurant, so, and she used to do the dessert. So everyone in my family has cooked at a certain point. So when I was like 15, I was making my own pasta from scratch and stuff like that. I've always been in the kitchen. So I think that helps. Like, there's obviously loads of things I fall down on in that side where I've never been like technically trained, but you can adapt and learn those skills with food styling. It's not as intense as if you go into a working kitchen. There's a little bit
Yeah.
more adaptive learning because it's not cooking at the end of the day. It's almost preserving what you're putting on set.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's the kind of right description of it, is like preserving, because sometimes a turkey might sit under the lights for 6 hours maybe,
Yeah.
and like be painted with some sort of like gravy Marmite mix, and it might only be cooked like for 2 inches so that you get like a nice slice, and like then it might then go back in the fridge to the next day. Like it's kind of just, you're right, like preserving what you've got and going back to like having the best sample of 10 examples, really.
Exactly. Having the options and just working out how that thing is going to hold up on set and look good on set, but also look like it's been cooked, look warm, look appealing, not look, because things straight out of the packet do look static and just stiff. So you've got to work around that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of, I was like, I have to unlearn cooking in a way as well. It's really different.
Do you find that sometimes you'll be at home and you'll be cooking, and then do you find that you fall into like your food style in mind and then you have to pull yourself back out again?
No, I do think weirdly, like I've always enjoyed cooking for flavor first, and then, but definitely like how things look. Me and my mum used to do massive like kind of banquets just for each other. Like we would just get in the kitchen together and do like kind of tapas for each other, and I would stand on top of a farmhouse table and take pictures of how we had presented it on the table. So like I've always been interested in that, but I think I have more of a level of detail now because you have to really hone in on things. So I'll kind of think of the science a little bit more, whereas I never did that. It was just kind of instinctive. Whereas I do think of that now, even in the kitchen, I'm like, what would be the best way to approach this thing? And I do take that into the kitchen at home a little bit.
It's almost like different problem solving to like what I would do with my products that I'm styling, because technically we're both stylists, but just of different items, really. Like yours is food, mine's like mostly clothes or product, and like it's seeing that detail, and then you're like, oh, actually, does that look as nice as what it should do? Like, even at home, I mean, like, yes, I'm dressed like a tramp today, but it's like, oh, if we hang this like this, I'll get less creases. If I do this, like trying to get that through to Nath when I'm like, hang stuff out on the air dryers, then we don't have to iron it. Yeah. And it must be the same when you're doing food. Like maybe like when you're maybe you don't just launch stuff on a plate like I would at home. Like maybe you're just like thinking about it a lot more, and that's subconsciously as well because you're doing it every day.
Yeah, definitely. I think like obviously I don't think of like angles and be like, my sausages need to be towards the front of the plate tonight and the mash can be at the back. But it's just process, like more process driven than I used to be. It used to be a bit more like how can I get maximum flavor? And I'm still like that, but it's interesting how techniques kind of bleed into your life. Like the roast potato technique has bled into my life because that is the best way to do roast potatoes, even if it's
do fill us in, because I feel like I need to know.
I'm sure there are many different ways to do this, but this is how I do it and I like to do it. And it does make a slightly different roast potato. It's very much like a roast potato kind of chip, but in the best way. So you just take your Maris Pipers, whatever you're using, and peel them, get them in your water, bring it up to the boil till they're just about to fall apart. You take them out, you drain them, you give them a tiny chuff, not too much because they will fall apart a bit too much, and then you lay them out on a baking tray and let them steam dry so all that water evaporates out of them. You don't chuck them in while they're wet still. And then I learnt this from doing a Christmas shoot, put them in the freezer. Put them in the freezer so you can do this ahead of time, so it's grand. Put them in the freezer, and then the next day you prep your oil as you would, or your goose fat or whatever, with your get it really hot in the oven, and then you throw them in from frozen. And I don't actually know what I don't know if it's the steam in the inside, because as they cook, and it takes ages, you look at them in the oven after about half an hour and you're like, nothing's happened. Absolutely nothing's happened there. They're not coloured at all. And then as it goes on, they take a good while because obviously they're frozen. And you turn them every now and then, and they get so crispy on the outside. But because I think they've been frozen on the inside, they're so fluffy. So fluffy. And they don't change colour, crispiness all day. You can eat one like later on in the day. Absolutely no problem.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I am literally going to do that this weekend with my mum.
Good Christmas tip as well. You know, if you've got a lot of people around for Christmas, get them in the freezer. Do it ahead of time.
Sounds great. I love a good roasty me. Like, that sounds incredible.
So good. Literally, they just basically make like a chip roast potato, because the outside is so crispy and the inside is so soft. So if that's not the type of roast potato you want, don't do that. But I love that type of roast potato, so it's great.
Great. I'm completely with you on that. So what's the most fun shoot you've done, food styling and modelling?
Oh, good question. That's a hard one. I'll do modelling first, because that's probably easier to think of the big shoots. I did quite a lot. I got quite lucky. I did quite a lot of fun shoots. I did the Jet 2 advert. I mean, most creatives know me for that little advert, because it went on for so long they were sick of me, because we shot it just before COVID and they couldn't reshoot it. So I was on that advert for like 4 years, and everyone was like, for God's sake, this girl again. Jesus, what? But it was really fun. It was fun being out in Tenerife and shooting for 12 days and jumping into pools and being on jet skis and going up to drink cocktails. And just more than anything, it's kind of the same with food styling. It's all about the people that you're with that make it fun. That was a really good shoot for that reason. We had a lot of fun. It was hard work, which doesn't sound hard work, but we were there all day doing it. But yeah, a lot of fun. People were really nice. So I'd say that one.
Yeah, I think you're so right. You've hit the nail on the head. When there's a good collection of people and everyone's like, especially on location shoots like that, when it is hard work, you're churning stuff out. You're like, right, okay, we've got maximum light or whatever. We can churn out as much as we possibly can. Everyone gets tired by like day 6. You're like, but everybody keeps each other going because you're all like in it together. And there's kind of this, I wouldn't say trauma bonding, but there's some sort of like bond where you're like, right, let's all get through it because we know it's actually quite a fun job.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you're right. I think you're right. It is kind of like trauma bonding. It's like shared experience. You're like, oh, we've got through this together. The kind of hours of jumping in and out of the sea and being on that jet ski in the blazing sun, you're like, no one understands, but they do. They understand. They've been there with you. And you're like, oh, we got through this as a team. Yeah, it's great.
So what's your favourite food styling job?
Favourite food styling job. What was my favourite food? Oh my God, I'm trying to rack my brain. I don't know if it's because I'm like quite new to it. I'm like, I'm always stressed. I'm trying to think. I've done lots of like fun shoots where you kind of, it's the same thing. You've got that camaraderie and you like get through it together, and you're in random little like catering vans outside the shoot, and you're just like pulling through, and you've got your music on. You're like, we can get through this. I actually did a really fun shoot for what was it for? It was for Quorn, actually. And that was really interesting. It was one of their TV adverts, and I was only assisting on it at the time. And what the process that I found really interesting was the way they shot the whole thing. They took over a street in Wigan, of all places. They took over a street there, and the lighting was incredible. They put them up on buildings, like different coloured lightings, and the sets, they shot it so beautifully. I can't remember the company that did it. That was really interesting, and I learned a lot on that shoot because you're just around a lot of other creatives and you pick up stuff. That was really fun. I'm trying to think of other ones that I've done that were fun. Food styling. Me like racking my brain. Like, what did
Do you have a preference of doing, like, do you prefer TV or stills, or what's your preference there? Because I think that is something that maybe general public doesn't realize, is that TV is like longer hours, but you might have like a fluster of like 4 hours work, and then you're waiting for stuff for a few hours, and then there's another like 4 hours fluster. And then on stills, it tends to be like usually a 9-5-ish kind of day, and you've maybe got like 2 shots to do, and it's like maybe a bit more not fast paced, but like you might do 3 shots, say, in a day, or 2, and it's not like you're not trying to like ram through loads. I imagine with TV, you're kind of like trying to ram through loads. I don't know then if that made any sense.
Yeah, no, it made sense. I totally get what you mean, and they are totally different animals. They really are. So, my main thing within food styling is that I enjoy both sides of it, but as long as I feel like I've got enough time to do a good job. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you're just not afforded the luxury of time, and you just feel like you're chasing your tail. I quite like the intensity of TV. If I'm like really organized on it, and you know, it's like getting that perfect moment. I quite like trying to kind of work out what's going to achieve that. But in the same breath, I kind of like the still image. You feel like you can achieve a little bit more in a day, and you know, a lot of the time you might feel a little bit more loose with your creativity, especially if it's kind of like recipe building and stuff. Like, we've got this thing, like we've got this new, you know, sausages to store. What kind of recipe can you think of? I quite enjoy that, because I think that's a way that I've always cooked. Like, oh, what's left in the fridge, and what can I make out of that? And how can I make this look nice? That's really exciting. So I like both for different reasons, but I think TV is more tiring personally.
Yeah. I think whenever I've done the odd like TV job, I've absolutely loved it. But then I sort of like get this adrenaline high, and then the next day I'm absolutely pooped.
Yeah, you need recovery days, or at least I do anyway.
Yeah, same. I need like at least 2 per one day of TV work. But I think it's, you're right. There's like so many differences between the two, but actually our jobs kind of stay the same, which is a really weird thing to say. But like, there's nuances between TV and stills that are different.
Yeah.
There was something I was just going to ask you, and the question has completely gone from my little brain fogged head. Can't remember. Oh, recipes.
Oh,
so talk me through how you get booked and kind of the process of doing recipes for a company, because I think that's a really intriguing thing as well, that people don't realize these recipes aren't just like pulled out of Delia Smith's book.
Yes.
You know, that you guys actually have to like think of them.
Yeah. Well, I actually really love doing recipe writing and development. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. And if I could do that all the time, I probably would. I absolutely love it. And basically, you'll get a brief from a client, and it will be either based around a new product, or a few things that they've got in the supermarket, or a few things they want for social media. And it will be, we've got a general idea of what we want. Can you kind of alter these recipes, or think how they could work for an air fryer? We got a lot of that recently. Like, how can you adapt this for an air fryer? And I really enjoy the process of testing. Like, I would love to be in the Ottolenghi test kitchen, testing things out and getting it to the point where you're like, that is actually, you know, like testing it first, going, needs more this, testing it again, going, actually it could do with this, and then get into that product where you're like, that's it, that's the recipe. I love that process. It's less stress, because you're just in your own little world, and it gets to the point where you're happy with it, and you're like, amazing, right? I love that. That's probably one of my favorite processes.
Is that something that you end up doing like 50-50 with food styling with? Do you think it's like half of your job?
I wouldn't say so. I wish it was. I think it depends how early on you get brought into the process of things, but I probably only end up doing it about 20% of the time. And it will be for specific clients. But a lot of it out there, it's just getting the work, I suppose.
Yeah. Again, I think that's something that people don't realize is a thing. You know, that little recipe in the back of a little supermarket's leaflet is
Yeah.
written by somebody
Yeah.
like yourself or another food ec. You know, it's not just plucked out of thin air. I think it's really interesting just because I love following a recipe and I'm pretty shit when it comes to doing stuff off the fly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
really interesting.
I can do like spag bowl, you know, like classics,
Hmm.
fine, like mac and cheese, or I call it cheesy pasta, that kind of thing. Because like my mum kind of brought us up on that, so it's
Yeah.
kind of quite easy to do. But then, and like chili con carne and things, but anything else, like I wouldn't attempt a curry without a recipe. I wouldn't attempt like anything a little bit out there without a recipe.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
I understand that though, because there's always quite a lot of ingredients in those things. So
yeah,
this is a
yeah,
question for
that's
you then. When you do your like if you do a weekly shop or something like that, or you're prepping for the week, do you get some recipes ready ahead of time? Like, we're having this on Tuesday, we're having this on Thursday.
so we have literally, before we went on holiday, we would just like go around the supermarket, buying whatever the fuck we wanted, right? And then actually wasting it a little bit, which is quite bad. But then, and also I was eating a lot of like veggie vegan like processed stuff. Like, so I'd do
Mm,
like, Nath would be at work and I'd be like, fuck this, I'm just going to whack something in the oven. So it'd be like corn, chicken nuggets, waffles and baked beans. Like that was quite a regular shit diet of mine.
nice.
But the last 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we've been like pulling together recipes that we've wanted to try out of. We've got some beautiful cookbooks. So we've been pulling recipes out and then making enough and then freezing some of the extra. So actually we've been shopping 2 recipes now. And actually our shopping's due in the next like half hour. So tonight we were left with what was in the cupboard, which was like quite shit. So I had like a veggie finger sandwich, and then we had some like Indian sides, like, you know, like little pakoras and stuff.
Oh
It
yeah.
was a very random like dinner. But I do think I've enjoyed cooking, and then I've been taking those, like, say we'll make enough for like 4 or 6, and then we've both got some for lunch, or a bit healthier if Nath's working a bit late, I can just whack it in the microwave and I'm actually eating something a bit more nutritious than chicken nuggets and waffles. So yeah, we were quite bad and now I feel like we're getting a bit better. So yeah, but there's a few recipes that I go back to time and time again, but I still couldn't cook them. I maybe adapt them a little bit because I can't eat a lot of tofu, so some recipes have tofu in, so maybe I'll opt out for like maybe a chickpea or like a butter bean instead or something, like, especially if it's in a curry, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, we kind of do that, but we've both enjoyed cooking again, so yeah.
It's good. I think it does go in waves, doesn't it, with cooking?
Yeah,
And when you get on that kind of good run of cooking meals that are a little bit more kind of satiating and healthy, you realize how good you feel. And
yeah,
having those leftovers, you're like, oh, I've got those. Especially when you're working hard as a creative and you take some leftovers in for lunch. You're like, oh my God,
yeah.
I've got good energy today. I'm not going to like be asleep at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's so it, because I was on a job the other week, a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't take any lunch with me, and all that I could eat in the canteen there was jacket potato and baked beans, because everything else was like meat
Are you
based.
vegan or veggie?
Mostly vegan, 80% vegan, 20% veggie.
Yeah.
Kind of, if we're on holiday in France, say, I'll just be veggie because it's way easier.
Yeah.
I say that I struggled to get a vegetarian meal in the north of France this summer. Like, there just really wasn't much, but mostly vegan if I can help it. And I think that kind of that used to be quite limiting, actually, being veggie vegan.
Yeah.
Because are you veggie as well?
I'm not a veggie, but I love cooking predominantly veggie food at home. I just love it. I love vegetables, and I'm not a big meathead, so it's quite easy for me.
Yeah.
But I think people that are like love meat, it's really hard to imagine like my dad, who's an old school French chef. He's like, meat and 2 veg, and you bake potatoes, and that'll do. And he's like, he couldn't even think of doing like a harissa aubergine with couscous or something. He'd be like, what are you on about?
Yeah.
But my mum's good at like doing all that type of food. She really loves like branching out and doing more vegetarian, vegan food. So I do love cooking that way.
Yeah, I think it's been good because the rise of like Gaz Oakley, the Bosch Boys, and like some other kind of like vegan chefs that have maybe come up from YouTube, it's really kind of made people realize that you can cook really flavorful food without having to just be like, my dad's the same as well, meat and 2 veg, like,
yeah,
you know, and I think you can cook some really nice stuff. And actually Nath, he is a meat eater, but at home predominantly eats like vegetarian, I'd say. And then if he wants meat, he goes and gets it from the butchers, and it's nice meat rather than just like shit, so. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to like cook like big stews and like big like curries and things. And you're so right, when you have a hard day at work and you're like, oh yes, I've got like my favorite like peanut butter curry or whatever, like
it makes so much difference.
Yeah, and you feel less tired, like
100%.
Like that jacket potato, although it was absolutely delicious, I was tired after about 2 hours after eating it.
Yeah,
I was like, fuck me, like I need to lay down now, like carb overload.
Yeah, and all the sugar in the baked beans.
Oh yeah, but baked beans are like king. I do love a good baked bean.
You love a good baked bean, do you?
Yeah, and I'm not a fussy. Some people are like they've got behinds.
Yeah,
I'm not fussy. Like I'm like,
can you
give
tell
me
the
Tesco
difference?
value. Yeah, but I'm not really like a baked bean snob. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm not a baked bean snob. I'll have whatever comes. Yeah, I'm not too fussed.
Yeah, same. And actually, the longer you cook them, the better they are anyway.
Yes, some of them can be. I suppose the cheaper ones are probably a bit firmer, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're so good. Anyway, what I was going to ask you about is your gardening, because I noticed on your Instagram you have a beautiful little balcony that in the summer just seems to explode with food that you can use. Yes. So how did you get into gardening? Is that something from your parents being chefs and kind of using everything that's around them, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, it is. You're 100% right. It's, my mum really has always been a gardener. I can never remember her not gardening, and she's always, because we've been cooks throughout, she's always grown food to eat and herbs and always had that kind of thing going on. My granddad was a farmer and had an allotment throughout the later years in his life. And in his greenhouse, he had a greenhouse that was solely for tomatoes. Because I don't know if you know this, but tomatoes are my favourite food in the world. And like, there's not a day I don't eat a tomato. I'm like tomato obsessed. It's my favorite food. I think I'm slightly allergic to them, but it's my favorite. So I always just like, I'm not going to be a gardener. It's too time consuming. And then actually it was when I moved to London and I had a south facing garden.
Oh, there it is.
Teeny tiny kind of bedsit of a flat. I had a south facing garden, and it was like that part of London that gets really hot, not far from Heathrow. So I was growing everything. Let me tell you, things that do not grow in the north. So I was growing like aubergine, peppers, tomatoes. I mean, you can grow tomatoes up here, but peppers and aubergines, there's no way. Things that I just really got into it, and lockdown really spurred us on, because I had what's the word that I'm looking for? Neighbours. That's the word that I'm looking for. I had Colombian neighbours on one side and a little old lady from Zimbabwe on the other side, and they both were growing vegetables and stuff, and we would like veg share and like chat to each other while we were out there during lockdown, and be like, I've got a couple of courgettes going, what have you got? Like, we can do a little swap, and we'd like water each other's plants and stuff. So that's what kind of spurred me on. And once you get into it, it's hard to describe how much love you have for it. You see a thing from grow from a seed to develop into something you can actually eat. And it tastes so different, and not everything, but a lot of things, they taste so different, and you know that they've not had chemicals pumped on them. And it's a labour of love. And yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. But it's harder up north, 100%.
Yeah, I am with you. So we sound like we've got similar like grandparents. My grandma and granddad were farmers as well, and so my grandma had like polytunnels full of food all the
Oh,
time,
that's
and
incredible.
like it was just stuff just used to taste different. Like it tasted like tomatoes should or carrots should. You know, we'd
Yeah.
yank stuff out of the ground ready for tea that night. So similarly, in lockdown, we had a allotment, and I was just growing stuff all the time. And it was fucking massive, Grace. It was like the size of a swimming pool. It was huge.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then when work picked up again, I couldn't keep up with the allotment and work because it was so big. And that was over in Manchester.
Yeah.
And then here, because home turf is so wet and we're on the edge of the like hill, it's so wet and so windy that even my rose bushes are like, what the fuck is going on, hun? Like, basically we need to redo the whole garden and then I can get planting stuff properly where I think it's going to survive. But like,
Yeah.
it's so wildly different what you can grow in different spaces. Like I haven't really tried much this year, but I do want to start growing a few bits. But I think it'll be more like is the right word brassicas? Like it'll be things like cabbages
Yeah,
and
that
like
is the right
broccoli
word.
and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't think we're going to be able to get. We got peppers and aubergines when we were doing it in the greenhouse in Stockport, but I don't think we'll get them here. It's not warm enough.
You can't get them
It's
outside.
too wet.
It's just no way. Unless you can hunt down a variety that's very cold resistant. Like, I think there are a few cucumber varieties that are really cold resistant. But you've really got to like assess how much sun you get in that specific area. If you get only 6 hours, then you know you can't really grow things that need a full day of sun. So our balcony at the moment, which is beautiful, I absolutely love it, overlooks the valley and just loads of trees. But it doesn't get a lot of sun. It gets about 4 hours. So it's very limited, like what I can grow out there. So my whole kind of gardening has changed, and it's mostly just herbs and ferns and things that like the damp and cold. And then the veg that I grow is normally like you say, salad leaves, which you can grow anywhere. You know, things like pak choi, which you can grow in like darker times. Peas, they're not too bad. They can take a little bit of a colder time, but I like the fact that it makes you assess like, what can I do to make this area work?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it doesn't just, it's not easy. It's hard work. It's just trial and error, basically.
yeah. I think you're so right, and I think like we were trialing and erroring a lot in the allotment. Again, similar to you, we were getting like people go, well, I've got a gluttony of marrows. Do you want these? And you'd go, right, I'll swap you for a pumpkin or I'll swap you for this. And then some years you'd get fuck all because like it just stuff wouldn't grow or it was too wet or, you know, and that's the dice you kind of roll when you're doing gardening like that as well, especially to eat. But I think, yeah, you're so right. You've just got to like see what copes in the land you've got.
Yeah, that's
And
a good way
like,
to put it. Like, you've just got to see what's going to be able to cope. And nature's like,
yeah,
that's all you're getting. Sorry, love. And you're like,
yeah,
okay, potatoes it
yeah.
is.
Yeah, we will live off potatoes for a year. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what you're like, that's what I can do in this damp, wet, grey sky. And that is it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely with you on the ferns, so I really want some ferns in our garden. And I'm starting to like plan our garden a bit because it needs like gutting and redoing. But I would like to be a bit more what's the word I'm looking for? A bit more like actually natural to what is supposed to be in this area.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
because I think there's so much that what were we watching last night? We were watching something about how the Victorians just went out and like pulled plants and brought them back to the UK basically.
Yeah.
And like how all the Victorians love ferns and like all this other thing. And it's so true that like a lot of our like native plants, that's the word I was looking for earlier, aren't actually native to this country.
Yeah.
So it's like some stuff just won't survive and then some stuff is kind of adapted to survive. And
Yes.
it's so interesting. But it is interesting when you come to a place that's like because we're both on similar. You're actually not too far away from me, but like it's similar kind of like wet mosses are growing fucking fantastically in all my pots,
Yeah.
but like, you know, it's just because it's a bit wet. Like,
Yeah. How
you
can
know,
you adapt? I think it's really.
yeah,
Do you live in a valley as well?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
We're on
live
the
in a.
top of the.
Oh, that's good because I mean, like, obviously, I'm in a flat, so I'm not down the bottom, but we get quite a lot of light, but not on the balcony. But I think the best thing you can do is just go around where you live, look in other people's gardens, and be like, what things that I like in that garden are thriving, like take those on board and try them in your own garden. Because
Yeah, I
there's
think
no
that's
point trying things that are going to really struggle in the wet. It's just no point.
no.
It's going to die instantly. And then you'll be like, I'm a bad gardener, but you're not. It's just like, that's never going to work. It's never going to work.
Yeah, exactly. Like we naively bought a fig tree from the garden centre and it's stunning,
Oh,
but it's like it's taller than me, and because of our garden just gets the wind and the rain just comes like vertically like across it,
oh my God.
it's just struggled a bit. So like when we redo the garden, it'll need to come like somewhere a bit more protected.
Yeah.
But it's grown some new leaves, so we'll, if it turns
Hey,
into a bush, then fine.
you never
I'm
know.
fine with it.
Stranger things have
As long as it,
happened.
yeah, as long as it copes with this wet. But it's funny how like I think our generation is starting to pick up on like taking a slower pace of life and growing our own food and appreciating these kind of like, I wouldn't say like old school hobbies because I feel like they've been around, like, well, they are old school, they have been around a long time, but like we're appreciating them a lot more and going like, oh, actually, like I want to grow aubergines or I want to grow something different, and like we're trying stuff like that. I feel like we're slowing down an awful lot and like, yeah, just enjoying life a little bit, not feeling like we've got to be productive all the fucking time.
I think it's really important. I mean, I used to like tease my mates when I was really younger. Well, they used to tease me really because they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're like a grandma already." And I have always been old for my age, no matter what. But
Yeah.
it's so desperately needed in today's kind of society with social media and that dopamine dump and that everyone's chasing, that you need things that take you away from that are mindful practices. And it can be, it doesn't have to, it can be anything you want, but something that takes you out of that space of just getting fake highs. It's things that actually feed your soul in a positive and rich way. And I think gardening is a fantastic one. We actually have in Todmorden is where Incredible Edible started. And
Oh,
I don't know
really?
if you know what that is, but it's basically just a community project where all around Todmorden, even like the police station and along the canals, there's plants there edible, and they're kind of maintained by the community and they're free to everyone. Herbs, like berry bushes, vegetables, everything. And it started here.
That's such a beautiful idea.
It's the
That's
best.
so great.
I absolutely love it. It's so cute. It's really community focused, and I need to kind of make more of it because I walk along that canal and I was for food styling. It's great because I was like, oh my God, red currants are already in there. I need to pick those for work because I can't get red currants anywhere. And then when I went back the next day, they were all gone. I was like, no,
Oh no.
somebody's so quick to it. So it's really good. I absolutely love it. And it's got to be good for all the wildlife. It's got to be amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that must be good for like the community as well, and like the kids can like pick whatever they want, and that's really cool.
I think
That's such a cool scheme.
it's really important. I think there are a lot of lower income households around here, and I think it was kind of there's a lot of movements that have started here on the back of if the government isn't going to help us, we'll help each other. And there's a lot of that movement here in Todmorden, which I really admire and appreciate. And you see it in a lot of ways, even like some stuff that are left over from work. When I can take it, I'll take it to the local food bank, and you see the immediate impact when you live in a small town, which is really lovely.
Yeah, that's really nice. I think that's something that our industry can be quite bad for is waste. And I don't know, I saw a reel the other day and it was like, everything you have ever purchased is still on this planet. And it's been like circling around in my head.
Oh God.
And I was like, oh God, this has been circling for weeks. But I think it's so easy to follow the consumerism and follow all the marketing that we're doing, but actually we need to make a conscious choice to balance that out. And I feel like quite a lot of us buy secondhand, growing our own veg, doing like crafts with the kids that are all from recycled materials. And, you know, I feel like we're trying to balance our jobs essentially.
Yeah. It's offsetting, isn't it? Because, I mean, you've got to earn money at the end of the day, and you've got to be as good as you can be at work. And like you say, if there's stuff that you can take to food banks, absolutely amazing. And if there's stuff that people can eat, that's fine. If a lot of it, unfortunately, is unedible, but if there's stuff people can eat, I had something today, actually, from a social shoot that was delicious. I was like, give me one of them if I can eat it, please. It was so yummy. That's great. But yeah, it's kind of, you've got to kind of just think, how can I offset that? I mean, I do anyway. You don't have to, obviously, but I think it helps if you can take on some of those things in your own life. Makes you feel like a little bit more at peace with things.
Yeah. And I'm the same as you. Like, I'm so torn because like I really love my job, but also capitalism.
How do I not be a hamster on this wheel?
Yeah, like how do I trade with my friends and colleagues so that I can still live in my house?
Exactly.
Like it's really weird.
Yeah.
But I do think that incentive in Top Modern sounds really nice. Like that's such a cool community thing. Like there's a community garden here, like literally not even 10-minute walk for me, but it looks a bit neglected. So maybe I ought to find out who's in charge of it and see if I can just go and like help it along a bit.
Yeah,
because I think there is stuff that can be done.
I think it just needs people that have got a little bit of time and a little bit of patience and kind of the motivation to be like, okay, we'll set up a little. They actually haven't ever done it, which is shocking, and I need to get on it. But they gather every Sunday for the Incredible Edible in most weathers, just to do a little bit every Sunday, and then afterwards, everyone kind of goes for a group curry that someone makes or something like that.
Oh, nice.
So it's. I think it'll be similar people every time, but then a real mixture. Anyone can come, drop in, and do a few hours of gardening for the community. So it needs that facilitation of someone to go, this is the time, like all come and just put it online and just be like, okay, we're here again this Sunday, and drop in for a few hours if you can. It just needs someone to facilitate that. Yeah,
you're so right. And I think being outside is so good for us as well. Like me and Nath walked Coco yesterday in the like autumnal sun, and I was so here for it. I actually put too many layers on as well yesterday, but I was just like, oh, it's slightly cold, but it's sunny, and it's just, you could see for miles. And just something could just like soothe my soul.
I think it's really important for creatives, especially creatives in studios. And it's not just in our line of work. Like my partner's brother is a props maker for films, and it's repetitive, hard work in studios with lots of chemicals. And he lives in New Zealand now because he gets a bit of a better life balance with being able to go out more and be out in nature a bit more and combat that kind of, it can be quite all encompassing when you're inside for like 4 days straight and you're in a dark studio. I think people don't realize that as well about sets. You're not always on an interesting location. Sometimes it's literally just in a dark studio that they need the lights turned down to you literally can't see what you're styling. because, because they need that lighting for on set, and you're like, I can't even see this. Literally today, this pudding, I had to hold my phone torch up to like try to like take a little bit out of this pudding. I was like, can't see anything here. And then you go outside and you're like, oh my God, the great outdoors.
Yeah. I got called a weirdo. I think it was last summer or summer before. We were shooting like Christmas stuff. So all the lights had to be off because Christmas lights were on trees and then, what have you. So I just took a head torch in that I'd walk the dog in. And someone was like, this is so genius, but you look like a right dickhead. And I was like, yeah, but now I'm not tripping over everything. Like, I'm not tripping over myself. I'm not tripping over these lights. I'm not,
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, we're constantly like got a phone torch
the
out or whatever.
amount of things that I bump into is worrying. I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens. I don't know if it's because on set you're like hyper focused on the thing that's in front of you. You don't even think about where your feet are. I'm just like knocking lights, knocking tables. I'm so sorry. I swear I'm not this clumsy, but something happens.
I swear as well. I knock over polyboards with my arse all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so unspatially aware when I'm on set because I think you're so focused on your product.
Exactly.
You kind of forget that there's shit around you. At times I trip over like C-stands or like I trip over a tripod or like, or a photographer. You'll be on set and then I'm going to blast them it. They'll come and like put something right behind you, like a scrim or something or some trace paper. And they're like, oh, sorry, I've trapped you in there. Like, well, yeah, you have. Did you not see me like bent next to the table trying to get in to do what
oh
I need
my
to
God,
do?
yeah. That's my favorite when they're like, right, can you just move that pie or whatever 1 centimeter that way? And I'm like, I could if I could get in there, mate. Like, I can't get in there. Like, you have put everything around. I literally couldn't even get a pinky in there if I tried.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And they're like, oh yeah, so sorry. So I have just moved that polyboard there. And I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah, and then they'll be like, oh, you'll go in, and then you'll be like, oh shit, now I've got to reverse out of this space.
Oh yeah, back
and
up.
not like and knock the camera or bang your head on the camera, which happens.
Just look like a nervous horse, just like tottering back, like trying not to hurt anyone. Just like, sorry. Because you never really can gauge what's behind you, how big your ass is, and you're just like trying not to ruin what's just happened.
Yeah, and like it's always the time as well when your shoe, like my shoe will just tap something, or like my sole will get stuck on a bit of something sticky on the floor, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. And then the photographer just glares at you like,
rolls their eyes.
Yeah.
I know.
First day on set, hun.
I like turn around in slow motion. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And they're just like staring, just like an upset parent. I'm sorry.
I'm waiting for that line. I'm so disappointed in you to come out.
Oh, God. What happens to our spatial awareness? I don't know.
I don't know either. So also talk me through how it is working with an agency, because I don't have an agent, and I know that you've been with your agent for a long time. And did you transition from being a model to a food stylist with that agency as well?
Yeah, it was I can't even remember at the time how it specifically came about. I must have mentioned that I was interested in food styling. And at the time I was in London, so I did a short course at Leith's for Food of School and Wine in food styling, which is basically just a kind of Kickstarter course, really. And then just started assisting, and they were happy for me to kind of do both at that time because they could manage my chart for me, basically. So my schedule, they could manage it over modeling and food styling. And I just started off assisting. Obviously you can't just start as a food stylist. You've got to learn the tricks of the trade and you get in there. So it was quite smooth. But then COVID happened and my modeling work fell off a cliff, food work fell off a cliff, and me and my partner decided, why are we living in this expensive bedsit in London? Like, we should move back up north. Like, most of my work was up there anyway, and he had established himself in kind of like a TV film world, and we're like, all right, well, let's take it up north and see how we can work in that environment. And I got super, super lucky because obviously the only thing that were open was supermarkets. So I was so lucky. I got thrown into work like straight away back at the back end of 2020, I think it was. And so it just kind of kicked off. I was still assisting in places and doing kind of little projects on my own if, I felt like I could do it. And it was a good transition for me. And up until a few years ago, I still did little bits of modelling. I still do little bits of hand modelling, which is helpful and good when they want someone to look confident with a knife or something like that. It's really handy. So it's been good for me. And I'm like, I don't know if you're like this, but I'm pretty much a nightmare at admin. So
Yeah.
I feel really bad saying that, because in my head I want to be organized, and I'm practically quite organized. Like, if you open any drawer at home, it's like set out in a way that makes sense. There's little boxes with certain things in, and it's super organized, but that's because my head is mad and it's full of crap. So I have to have an organized space. So when it comes to sitting down on a computer, sometimes my brain is just like, literally just like, what do you do? Because I think maybe because I've done a career for so long that I haven't really needed to get super proficient in those skills. I don't know. It might just be who I am. But admin for me is an absolute nightmare, and I hate it. So I'm so thankful to have an agent for that side of it, that sort out all my invoicing and, my receipts that I send, and the general kind of just liaising with people, which, has its minuses and pluses in different ways, because sometimes, you want to be like, I need to know more about this. Actually, I need to speak to the person directly. So it's good to have a good relationship with the person, like your agent, like Suzanne, who I work alongside at the moment. She's absolutely incredible. I love her. She's fantastic at her job, and that really helps. If you have to have a good kind of relationship with the agent that looks after you as well, so that they can go, okay, maybe it's better if you just speak directly about this, and you have a bit more protection in terms of, like, if you're sick, or they might be able to get cover for you and things like that. I think it works for me, especially on that side of just admin being overload. I just wouldn't know what I'd do. What would I do? I don't know. It's scary. It scares me.
Yeah, I think I'm like, I've got I use like an accountancy software, then I have an accountant, but I still peck my accountant's head, and he's probably quite annoyed that I peck his head. But I do that, and then I have like probably every 3 months I just go through the receipts and I just take pictures of them and it uploads. So like that's not too bad. But like sometimes managing my diary and liaising with clients and being like, why have I not been paid? Please, can you pay me? That can really like stress me out. But excuse me, I don't feel like, I feel like I'd feel out of control if I pass that on. So I'm like, kind of, because I've been doing it this way for like, similarly to you, you've been with an agent.
Yeah.
I've been doing it by myself for like, I don't know, over a decade, too many years. And I think you kind of get used to the way you do it. And then you're like, you build confidence with like asking to be paid, or like, here's my availability or whatever. And I think it's, I don't know, my other half looks in my diary and I've got a highlighter for like green is work that's confirmed, like pink is like interviews for podcast, and like yellow's meeting with friends or whatever. But there's often bits like scribbled out and then rewritten, and then like the dog walker's in, and it's just a mess. Like it's like my brain is completely like, it's batshit crazy.
Yeah.
If anyone took my diary, I don't think they'd know quite what any of the numbers meant, what any of the scribblings say. I think it'd be like the Da Vinci Code. I don't think anyone would understand it.
But it makes sense to you. You know what it means.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not that. I can't drop my diary down the toilet like I do my phone. So
yeah,
swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. I think there's ups and downs to both sides of doing it, and definitely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will do it when they start out and then maybe transition away from being with an agent, because obviously you do get a certain percentage of your income taken away from you that covers the kind of work that they do alongside that. So you do have to weigh it up whether that's important to you and, whether that works for you. I think it's a personal choice. So it's, basically just what works for you, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think like some people use it as a stepping stone to get into freelance work, and then some people stick with it because it makes sense to them. Like, I mean, I still pay an accountant. It's the same as me only paying, I don't know how much it is a year for my accountant.
Yeah.
You're doing the same, just on a daily, weekly basis rather than a yearly one. So yeah, it is. You're so right. It's what works for you, really. And if you can farm out a bit that's stressful to you, that other people don't find stressful, then it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, I do. I think I would find it quite, I think I struggle with, like when I'm on set, being able to step away and like put my attention. When I'm like focused, I'm quite like hyper focused. So if I try and step away and quickly answer an email, I'll like start it and then I'll forget and start doing something again on set. So it's quite good just to have that, you know, other port of call, which is really helpful if I'm just like
Yeah,
away
I
with the
do think.
fairies.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. Like, and I'll have to say to someone on set, like, oh, okay, I just need to answer this real quick and then I'll be back
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
And
It's about
like,
adapting, isn't it? Like you've like you
yeah,
say, you would adapt. Of course you would. Like I would adapt to that way of working. It's just what I'm used to at the moment, so it's easy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's nice. I think it's nice to hear different people's opinions on working with agencies and stuff because, like I say, I've never really done it. I've got like a non-exclusive agent at the moment, but she's like really new. She's only just started up in the summer, so like that might explode. You know, there's no who
Yeah,
knows
yeah,
what's around the corner, but and I think it's different for everybody, and
yeah,
it's nice that there's an option for both actually, and you can just, you know, I could probably like go to your agent and be like, right, I think I'd like you to do all of this, please. Could you have you got space to take on another stylist or whatever, you know?
yeah.
So I think it's a good option.
I also
Um
don't have that. I don't know if how you feel about this, and it's a really interesting part of our kind of creative world. I don't have that kind of scarcity mentality as much. Like I want everyone to achieve and do well. I don't have that kind of combative nature with other creatives. Like I really would love it to be more cooperative and, you know, everyone helping each other out and not like, oh, that person's got that job I really wanted. Like something normally comes along. And
I
yeah,
yeah, I think I'm similar to you. I walk away from competitiveness.
mm,
I just go, "Ah, fuck it. Like it stresses me out. And actually I'm similarly to you. I'd rather things were more collaborative and more like a kind of cooperative. But I definitely think that up north, everybody is more friendly, more like, oh, actually, I've got a job that I can't do, and they pass it on. Whereas I found down south, everyone was very shielded and very
yeah,
like that was my experience.
mm,
Um, but I don't know. It's a funny one because I think we can all get sucked into like comparing, especially when we're on social media and people are only posting their amazing jobs. They're not
mm,
posting like their day to day, like for me, like ecom fashion, like everyone thinks it's boring. I love it, but I'm not going to go posting it because people know I can do it. And once you've styled one t-shirt hanging on a hanger,
yeah,
they're all the same.
yeah,
But I think there's people forget that, you know, we're all only posting like our nice highlights, but I think it's hard not to get jealous, but it's just them remembering the good things you've done. And I think there is a sense of competitiveness to a certain point,
yeah,
but if you ignore it and just kind of like, right, okay, so maybe these people are like got a different motive or different morals to me, business morals or whatever, then you can kind of move through and the collaborative people that you want to work with will kind of always find the same people.
yeah,
So then almost the competitive ones are arguing between themselves and the rest of us are like all being
100%.
a nice little
Yeah.
gang, you know?
I love it when I turn up on a set and I'm with people that I know well, and I'm like, oh, you know, it's going to be a good day because everyone kind of chips in and helps each other out a little bit. And even if it's to the point of like, oh, we're doing this like a bacon sandwich, and I can see that someone's absolutely starving. Like, do you want a bit of toast? Does anyone want a bit of toast? Like, it's just nice to
Yeah.
be like, I can give you something. I can make your day a little bit easier, a little bit better. Like, even going into work with good energy, like I just find like it makes such a difference in this environment where you see this kind of similar group of people all the time. It's important to remember that you are going to come across these people, and if you can help people out, they probably will help you out again in the future.
Yeah. And also I think it's that thing of like, don't lend someone a tenner if you don't want it back. Kind of in the same thing with your energy, like give out what you hope for in return, but don't expect it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like that often you know, I think that does people in good stead as well. And I think just being respectful of other people, you know, like, just doesn't take a lot to be like, oh, you on this job together? Or like, oh, so-and-so's got in touch with me. Like, you know, like, it's doesn't take a lot to shoot people a message. And, you know, I think there's a big thing of like people nicking each other's clients and shit like that. And that's annoying when that happens. But,
Yeah.
you know, often when one door shuts, another one opens anyway. So,
and there's always some kind of drama, or there's always something. I just try and like distance myself from it as much as humanly possible. And like,
yeah,
I almost like want to close my eyes and be like, I don't want to know about this place's drama. Like, I don't want to know.
yeah. Like, that's funny because, yeah, some drama happened a couple of years ago in a place, and I had no fucking idea. I was completely fucking oblivious until someone told me like 18 months later, and I was like, what? That happened? I had no fucking idea.
Yeah, that's normally
like,
me. That's normally me. I'm like, what happened where?
Yeah, I was like, what? It's like I got a newspaper like 3 years out of date. I was like, what?
Yeah. That's always me. I'm the last person to know. And they was like, you know about that, don't you? I'm like, what are you on about? I don't know anything about this. Yeah, just I think I'm too. I can't even. I don't know if you get this as well. I think this is the way my brain works. But when I'm trying really hard to focus on something food related, somebody's trying to like talk to me about their weekend or something. I can't even take in what they're saying. I have to stop and like look them in the face because my whole attention is on what I'm doing. So there's no way I know what's going on around me because I'm just like trying to get through the day as best I can.
I think, yeah, I'm kind of, depends on what I'm focusing on, but mostly if it's something that is like second nature to me, I can talk and work at the same time. But if it's like, if it's something I've really got to concentrate on or like a tricky product, I go a bit quiet and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to like focus on that.
I think that's a really good point because like things become movement memory, and it's like with cooking and podcasts and stuff like that. Like if it's a dish I've cooked all the time, I can listen to a podcast and do it. That's because it's that movement memory. You know exactly what you're doing. But if it's something that you're a little bit new to, or you need to like, you know, research or, you know, read up how to do, and it's, you know, a little bit tricky or whatever, your attention's got to be on it. And I think that's really important to remember when you're starting out in a new job. Like when I first started food styling or any creative industry, like be kind to yourself because it's all new and every day is a learning day and it's always different. It's just problem solving all the time. You've got to be kind to yourself because I went into it like so many times I wanted to quit because I was like, why aren't I getting the hang of this straight away? But you get there. Yeah. It just takes time. You've got to be kind to yourself about that.
Yeah. And I'm 100% with you. Like the stuff that I can do from like pretty much muscle memory is like all the e-com stuff. And that's only because I got like literally put into a burning pit and people like, we've got to do so much. And you go, right, fuck, I've just got to nail this.
You've got 75 shots to do today. You're not leaving until they're done. You're like, ah!
And everyone's crying in the kit cupboard, like, ah. But yeah, you just like crack on. And now, I mean, oh God, when did I start styling? Like 15 years ago, maybe. So some of that stuff I'm like, yeah, can do it with my eyes shut. And I think sometimes I annoy people because I'm talking too much. But I have started saying to people, just tell me to shut up. But I think it is that muscle memory. You're like, right, okay, well, this t-shirt, it's the same as the t-shirts I've styled for the last 15 years. Like there's nothing different. So yeah, I think you're so right on the muscle memory thing.
That proficiency just comes with how much you do it, doesn't it? Like you just got to build on it.
Yeah, and you're so right. You're so right to be kind to yourself as well, because like we all make mistakes. We all, even now, like I still make mistakes, or like I'll stick something down and then think, oh fuck, that's on paper, or like I should have, you know, and then ripping something or tripping over a light, you know, you do, shit happens, and like it's hard. It's easy to sit here and say, don't worry about it, because you know, we've been through it all, but you know, you can't hold on to stuff like that. I think it's just It's completely normal.
Yeah.
And it's normal to kind of like go, oh, fuck, is this what I want to do? Do I actually want to do this? Should I quit? I feel like we've all had that moment as well.
100%, 100%. I think
At least
that's
once a year
just
for me.
yeah. At the beginning, I think that was happening to me every few months. I was like,
Yeah.
I've come from a job where I only have to think about me, you know, like a model, just be like, okay, you've got to turn up and have energy today and try and look good. But if they don't
Yeah.
like the way you look, I can't do anything about that. That's just how I look. Whereas
Yeah.
all the food things I've got to cook, if they don't like the way I presented it, they're like, change it. And I'm like, oh God, you've got to change it. It's like so much more to think about. So yeah, the first few years I had so many ups and downs, but it's just about finding that rhythm and yeah, being a bit kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
It's not life or death,
Yeah.
you know. We're just glazing sausages, making potatoes look good. It's not going to change the world.
No, that's it. And I think that sometimes we all get stuck in with like the stress and like pressure of being on a shoot because you're trying to appease, like we were saying earlier, like 5, 6, 10 people, and actually like you say, it's just sausages, it's just a t-shirt. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I think it's
like,
important to remember for creatives and for people that are self-employed, there's so much that we don't get from normal, you know, practical jobs, from your everyday jobs. Like we don't get set training that we get paid for. You kind of have to kind of learn it as you go along or assist. And you don't get sick pay, you don't get holiday, you don't get all those little things that you would get in just your 9 to 5. We get a lot of other stuff, which is great, but there's a lot of kind of pressure that you take on yourself that would normally be involved in a job. They would kind of like set out for you and help you, especially if you're starting a brand new job. Like my partner's got a new job and he's got like 6 weeks of training and 3-month probation, and then he goes on a few courses, and it's like you kind of just have to take that upon yourself to do it. So
yeah,
it's a different world, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. I think also like our like conversations that we have at work can be like really deep really quickly because we're all trying to learn or we're trying to get through stuff, and like before you know it, you know exactly how old somebody's dog is, like how many kids someone's got, like their problems with their parents, or like
like therapy.
You know, yeah, it's like open therapy.
I absolutely love that. I love that. Don't you just love how open everyone is? I love it.
Yeah. I'm like, it makes you feel comfortable. And then I go like, oh shit, am I oversharing?
Yeah.
Like, oh fuck.
I have that at the hairdressers every time I come out. I'm like, what did I spend the last hour talking about? He must think I'm crazy. But
oh yeah. Yeah. And then I'll be chatting and the hairdryer's going and I'm talking really loud, and then she turns the hairdryer off and I'm like, yeah, and then this happened. And I'm like, oh fuck.
You're like, sorry everyone. I mean to be
sorry, guys. So I've got one last question for you.
Yes.
And answer it however you see fit. But what inspires you, Grace?
What inspires me? Oh, what inspires me? That's a brilliant question. Within work or life?
Both.
Okay.
Either or.
I
whichever.
would say a constant, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm constantly trying to find joy in the little things. It's kind of like gratitude, it's kind of like mindfulness, but I think you're doing well in life if you can find daily joys in small pleasures. And that's kind of what inspires me, to get pleasure out of little things, because that's what life is full of, little moments.
Yep. I completely agree with you. And it's little, because I do a daily gratitude diary as well, and I try and think of at least 3 things a day that I've noticed that I have gratitude for. And it can be things like seeing the sun. That is a big one living up north, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like maybe eating
Once
good
a
food
month.
or like oh, I got all my dose of vitamin D for the year in one day.
Oh my god, so funny.
But you're so right, it's not those big moments that I think we all think that life's about. It's all those tiny things of like, this sounds so silly, but I got a knife made for Nath, right, by Andy.
Oh,
Andy Broke.
amazing.
Yeah, a fucking cracking knife. And we'd just gone through life having like shit knives. And like this knife, this probably summarizes it, but this knife, every time you go use it, you're like, oh, this is so nice to use.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just so nice. It makes chopping vegetables a real joy. And I think sometimes it's those little tiny things every day peppered throughout your day. And you're like, oh, that's just made my life so much easier. And that's so nice. And it's so nice to use. It's got a bit of a story behind it. And, you know, I think you're so right. Those tiny little things every day, maybe catching the sunset or, you know, just having a cup of tea made for you is like one of my top things.
The best.
A decent cup of tea, I will say, but yeah.
Me and my partner, we do the same ever since COVID, I think it was. Most days we try to, and normally at the end of the day in bed, we do 3 things we're grateful for each. We take it in turns. One does one, one does the other. And it literally can be anything from, the tea that you made me was really nice to, I really enjoyed seeing all my friends on Sunday. Or it can be like, on the way to work, I saw this beautiful sunrise and mist over the lake, like by where we live. And it's just like acknowledging those little things that makes you feel good, 100%. And it's never anything that big, to be honest. That's what's so lovely about it. It's very rarely like a life-changing event. So when you can look back at the day and be like, oh, actually, there was a few moments. You've got to do it on the tough days. That's the worst part.
Oh,
you
yeah,
had the shittest day, and I go to him, I go, what's your list today? And he's like, I'm like, he doesn't want to, doesn't either. He's like, nothing, there's nothing good. And I'm like, come on, there's got to be something. That's the day you've got to do it. That's more important. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the days where you're like, oh, I suppose I didn't put my shoes on the wrong feet today.
Yeah.
It's fine. That was a win.
Oh, God. Yeah. I had a chocolate bar. It was fine.
Yeah.
Literally.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I have really enjoyed chatting to you and finding out how you transition from a model to a food stylist. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and it was very, very enjoyable.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!